Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Make It Destination. This is where I help you make it to your destination. My name's Amanda and I love to talk all things travel. And this week we're going to get into the cruise ship industry because I've been seeing some articles for the reemergence of the cruise ship industry in 2022. So if this sounds interesting to you, continue watching. I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of taking a cruise and why I could see the appeal, but I'm mainly going to be talking about the drawbacks of the cruise ship industry in and of itself, why you should avoid supporting it if you can, and maybe some solutions that could help the industry be more appealing to those that are trying to have a more wholesome or beneficial vacation for the countries they're visiting, as well as the industry in and of itself. So I'll be talking about some of the environmental problems, the economic and worker issues that arise, and a little bit about the crimes. So if that all sounds interesting to you, make sure that you like this video, make sure you click the subscribe button and the notification bell because I know you don't want to miss any of my videos. And let me know in the comments, what do you like about the cruise ship industry? Is there something that you've always just found appealing about going on a cruise? Or do you have similar sentiments that I do about the cruise ship industry and you kind of want to avoid it altogether? So just let me know and let's get into the video. Alright, so we're just going to start out with some general statistics and then we'll get into the environmental problems that cruise ships kind of produce just by existing. In 2018, the cruise ship industry was estimated to have about 26 million travelers, and in 2017, the estimated value of the cruise ship industry internationally was 117 billion USD. So these industries make an impact. That's $117 billion in 2017. Cruise ships have been described as floating cities. There's kind of this appeal to being on a boat, having all these activities by your side, not really having to think about what to plan. And right now, it's not just older populations booking cruise ships, because a lot of the time, when you think of a cruise, you think of, I would say, 55, 60 plus. And then maybe some families. But as the cruise ship industry has evolved, we could see Disney cruises, right? There are some cruises that are making amusement parks, water parks. They want to try to appeal to children and families because it really is one of those vacations you don't have to think about, which I think is the benefit of booking a cruise, right? You don't have to choose which activities you're going to do ahead of time. You don't have to choose, which countries are we going to visit? What islands are we going to visit? Things of that nature. It's kind of, here's everything you can do and you get to pick from that. So it's kind of a seamless, easy planning sort of trip to take, which is why I think people like cruise ships. So it's not just older populations booking cruises at high rates. The fastest growing population booking cruises right now are individuals between the ages of 30 to 39 from 2016 to 2018. And this demographic booked 20 times more cruises than they did before. And I think it is because of that shift in the cruise ship industry of appealing to children, appealing to families, making it an easy booking process. And it says 71% of millennials have a more positive attitude than cruising before in a survey that they conducted. So I just think if you're one of those people or you have a family that you really do not feel like booking a flight, booking the activities, trying to figure out what you're going to do, because it does take a lot of time and energy and not everybody likes planning trips. Personally, I love it. I feel like it's, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, but I can understand if you have a family of 4 or 5, how that could be difficult and why cruises seem appealing. I think the second pro of going on a cruise is that you could see multiple destinations for a cheaper price, right? If you do a road trip trying to hit certain states or try to fly from island to island, that becomes very costly very quickly. And I think the nice thing about cruises is that you can see multiple different destinations in 7 to 10 days. And that is awesome as a traveler, right? You kind of want to book as many things as you can in 1 week if you're very passionate about traveling. So it's nice that you get to see a taste of different islands, but you're not stuck there. So I think that's another cool thing about cruises. But I feel like those personally are the only 2 benefits, is that it's seamless with the planning and that you see multiple destinations for a cheaper price. Again, let me know in the comments if you see any other benefits, but those were the only two I could really think of. And I just thought this was interesting from a article that I read, which I'm going to link all the articles down below. I like to cite my sources. Again, all this information doesn't just come from my head. So if you want to check out the articles, they'll be down below in the description. So David Wallace, in his essay, A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, he talks about his experience on a 7-day cruise. And he says, you are told what to eat, you are told what will entertain you, and you will be told what will relax you, all in the name of luxury. And I think that is one of the most perfect descriptions of a cruise ship experience. You really are told what to eat, you're told what will entertain you, right? With the shows and the amusement park that they might have, or water park, and the destinations they choose. And you will be told what will relax you, all in the name of what they call luxury, right? The reason why I don't like cruises is actually, and I love my mom very much, and I'm very grateful that she booked a cruise for us, but I was in 9th grade, I think it was our spring break, or winter break, I don't remember, and she booked a cruise ship for my brother, her, and I. And for some reason I was upset about it, which I know sounds really petty and weird because I love travel, but for some reason I was upset about it. Maybe I had a bad feeling. We went on this cruise, very beautiful, right? They do the safety discussion in the beginning, right? About life jackets, lifeboats, so on and so forth. And so on this cruise, I was like, oh, this is a big enough ship. I won't get seasick. But unfortunately, I got seasick and I had food poisoning for the whole entire trip. And the seasickness started, I would say, the first night because you could feel the boat moving. You know, when you're in your room, you're not used to that. So I didn't feel good starting then. I didn't have any motion sickness medication at that time. And then I also, the morning after, I think I ate breakfast and had eggs and such. Didn't sit well with me, got food poisoning the whole entire trip. Every island we went on, I had to use the restroom several times. Unfortunately, I threw up in Atlantis in the Bahamas. So just from then, it made me question food safety practices on cruise ships. And also, I mean, seasickness, that's my own issue. But just kind of the appeal of cruises, and personally from that experience, I don't think I would ever book a cruise again. Maybe if I take seasickness medication and watch what I eat, maybe it would be a better experience, but just from that experience alone, I don't want to spend my hard-earned money on an experience that might not be valuable. So that's my little story time with my cruise ship experience, but we're going to get into the environmental problems of cruise ships and the industry in and of itself. So let's get into that part. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the environmental problems of cruises and the cruise ship industry in and of itself. When you go onto a cruise ship, your carbon footprint triples in size once you step foot on there. And the reason for that is because of the amount of emissions a cruise ship emits during your travel. One cruise ship could emit as many emissions as 700 trucks. That's a lot of emissions. Again, there's no perfect solution to lowering emissions, right? When you take a flight, you know, there are emissions on airplanes as well, but on a cruise ship, your carbon footprint triples in size. So just think about that. German watchdogs NABU surveyed 77 cruise ships and only found that one did not use toxic heavy fuel oil. So cruise ships in and of itself rely on a diesel engine or gas turbines or a mix of both. There have been many emissions tests to make sure that they're not emitting more than they're supposed to. And in Europe especially, environmental advocacy groups have pushed for these emission tests to be stricter because they're concerned that these luxury cruises are getting away with emitting more than they should. Unfortunately, there aren't homogenized standards for all cruise lines. So if you don't know what homogenized means, it means there's not a single set standard for all cruise lines, right? Let's just say, I'm just creating an arbitrary number, but let's just say you can't emit over 300, I don't know what the unit is, but 300 emissions for a 7-day cruise lines. There aren't homogenized or same standard is not consistent for every cruise ship or every cruise line. And because these rules aren't strictly enforced because it's on an international scale, it's likely these cruise ship companies will continue to sidestep these emission concerns. You know, in 2020, cruise ships were supposed to switch to a cleaner fuel. We all know what happened in 2020. But instead of switching to that fuel, which I think was most likely more expensive, cruise ship industries decided to go the easier route and install emission cheat systems called scrubbers. So what a scrubber is it allows cruise ships to buy heavy toxic fuel, wash this cheap fuel to take out the pollutants. Then you meet the International Maritime Organization standards, right? When they put the tester for the emission test on, they test your emissions. They're like, oh, okay, you are doing fine for your emission standard. Great, you're good, check, and they give, then you're fine. But what happens is these scrubbers, since they're cleaning the oil, they have to put the pollutant somewhere. So unfortunately, these pollutants go right into the ocean. They just dump it right in there just to pass these emission standards. So we really need to make sure that cruise ship industries don't cut corners like that, because they're polluting these nasty, dirty chemicals into the ocean, and that hurts marine species. It hurts when you go like fishing, you're ingesting all of that sort of stuff. And also it really does heavily pollute the water, and they're not being charged with anything. So in 2016, Princess Cruises were fined $40 million for dumping oily waste offshore of the UK. $40 million, that is a good chunk of change. But again, you have to think that these cruise ship industries were valued at $117 billion. 40 million, good chunk of change, but probably not as much as they should be charged for what they're doing. I also do want to say that a lot of cruise ships have been found dumping trash, sewage, and fuel directly into the ocean. That's disgusting. So when you're on these cruise ships and there are thousands, there aren't hundreds of people anymore, it's literally thousands of people using the restroom, throwing out their drinks, throwing out food, and these cruise ships don't really have a place to put it, because you're not going to just have a whole storage area just for sewage sitting there or trash sitting there, so you just dump it into the ocean. Again, this is extremely problematic for marine life, for also countries and islands that rely on tourism, because that trash eventually goes up on the shore, builds up, could pollute the beaches, so then they're unusable, could lead to algae blooms. All of these negative repercussions because a cruise ship doesn't know what to do with their trash, sewage, and dirty oil. So that's, to me, pretty disgusting. And unfortunately, like I said before, because there aren't international standards or homogenized emission standards, cruise ships are allowed to get away with this. And we're going to get into the economic/worker issues with cruises, but the environmental problems that ensue are going to make more sense when I describe how the cruise ship industry breaks down and how they kind of dodge these international laws and rules. So let's get into that part of the video. So now we're going to talk about the economics of the cruise ship industry as well as worker issues. So if you don't already know, the three largest cruise ship industries are Carnival Corporation, which is operated by Panama, England, and Wales. There's also Royal Caribbean Cruises, which is incorporated by Liberia. And there's Norwegian Cruises, incorporated by Bermuda. None of these cruise ship industries pay U.S. corporate taxes, even though they're all headquartered in Miami. And these three cruise lines control 75% of the market. When you don't have adequate competition in the free market, could lead to an oligopoly, monopoly. It allows the industries to decide what rules to play by. It could be extremely difficult to implement workers' rights on cruise ships because of this economic structure that cruise ships are under. The mega ships can be built in one country, headquartered in another, like they are in Miami, owned in a third country, registered and flagged in a fourth country, and even be possibly managed in a fifth country. Who owns the company then? Do they pay U.S. corporate taxes since they're headquartered in Miami? Is it where the cruise ship was actually built? Is it where the industry is incorporated? You can kind of see how this could lead to an entanglement of how do you implement rules and regulations if you don't know where the industry is owned by, if that makes sense. You could start to see where this becomes messy and muddy very quickly. So if you don't know, crew members are hired from all over the world, and this makes it difficult to assign crimes on cruise ships as well as workers' rights, since there is a theoretical jurisdiction. If you're in the middle of the Atlantic but the cruise ship let's just say, left Miami, but it's owned and managed in Liberia, which country's laws and rules apply? This is where it kind of is a big question mark. And cruises take advantage of local economies instead of working with them, which hurts the countries that are constantly visited by cruises. So when I went to Jamaica, I stayed at Sandals Resort. You could see my video of the problematic economies or structure of all-inclusive resort in my past video. But I stayed at Sandals and we went to Dunn's Rivers Falls, and we constantly saw cruises coming in and out, letting out thousands of people for a few hours into, Jamaica and then coming back in. You would think that these countries would be able to make some money from allowing these cruise ships to dock, maybe even not giving them, but finding a place to dump their garbage, maybe dump sewage, allow their visitors to roam off the cruise ship for a few hours. But unfortunately, cruise ship industries will create their own ports in destination countries, which only benefit their own economic interest. And if the destination decides, hey, you built this port, but it's on our land and we want to make some money from this, they will threaten to boycott destinations, especially if the destination threatens to increase their dock fees, which dock fees could be as little as $1 per person. When you think about it, it could be beneficial to receive $5,000 if there's 5,000 people, or 10,000. But unfortunately, the cruise ship industries make sure that these dock fees do not work to the economic interest of the destination, but for themselves. So I'll give you an example. Cruises make a large profit by investing in these ports, right? So for example, Royal Caribbean invested $18 million for co-ownership of this kind of Fort Street tourism village in Belize. Invested $18 million, but it's still on Belize's land. And they're using Belize as an attraction, right? Hey, our cruise ship goes to Belize, come over here. So you're still using that destination to lure people in. So there should be a better breakdown. But when breaking down the port charge, altogether is $5 per person, which sounds better than $1, but $4 goes to Royal Caribbean and $1 goes to the destination, which means Royal Caribbean recouped their money within 6 to 7 years. Again, I understand that Royal Caribbean is the one that did make the investment in the port, but they're constantly making this money, whereas Belize is allowing visitors to come, allowing the cruise industry to dock, and they're only receiving $1, which doesn't really help their local economy as much as it most likely should, right? These visitors are probably using their water systems, their sewer systems. They are buying food most likely and buying gifts and so on and so forth. But a lot of the time these, I would say, cruise tourism villages still benefit the cruise because you're not having that authentic destination experience. In one of the articles I read, I think it said these cruise ship industries kind of act like it's an authentic experience, but they kind of put their own kiosks in, or people right when you get off the dock, they put their own businesses that kind of could benefit the cruise ship industry right in front of you. So it seems like, hey, I'm going to, let's just say, Bermuda for the day from a cruise. I could help the local economy by buying some souvenirs, or maybe buying a timeshare, another cruise in the future. But all of those are somehow interconnected with the cruise ship industry in and of itself. So it's not helping the local economy. It's just kind of making you think that you are. And then when we go on to workers' rights and crew members, unfortunately crew members are known to be overworked since labor laws generally don't apply. So remember that weird theoretical jurisdiction we spoke about, and how the mega ship could be built in one country but managed by another, but headquartered in another. Makes it difficult for labor laws to A, be implemented, but B, be enforced, right? So kind of is a sticky situation. So a laundry attendant on board a cruise ship will make about $700 a month. A cabin steward will make between $650 to $1150 per month, including tips. And a kitchen cleaner may make as little as $600 per month. And usually the income of the employees is dependent on where they're from. It depends on the country they're from and what the minimum wage there is, which that makes sense to me. But unfortunately, I think the thing about cruise ships is you're on the ship 24/7 pretty much. It's not like a job where you go into the office, you're there from 9 to 5, and you could leave, you go home, relax. It's a job that demands time and energy. And so I think it's easy to take advantage of your workers on a cruise ship because the only place that they're going to go is their room. They're not going to go physically home somewhere. So you can say, oh, can you stay here for a few extra hours to clean this? Oh, well, this needs to be done. Or, we didn't expect this many people to go to the show, so can you stay? And so this adding up, honestly, like day after day of extending hours, of being overworked, and not receiving the pay that you should, not receiving overtime, and not having labor laws applied to you makes it extremely easy for workers to be taken advantage of. This is something as a traveler that you have to be cognizant about, because sometimes there could be a weird traveler-worker relationship, and that could make the vacation feel a little tense, I think is the right way to put it. But you have to understand how these systems work in order to know why the energy on the cruise ship feels the way that it does, and why the workers might not be as enthusiastic, I guess, as you'd like them to be, or just seeing how if you get to know somebody or try to tip them or something like that, and they kind of are looking around that weird energy, you need to understand why that's coming about. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the crimes. I just wanted to bring this up because I think it's interesting. Again, I'm not a real true crime lover. I'm not one of those YouTube channels that is very invested in true crime. But it is very odd that some people end up missing on cruise ships and nothing really happens. And so I just wanted to touch a little bit on this topic. So I guess since 2000, 322 people have gone missing or overboard on cruises, which, I mean, for an 18-year period isn't a vast amount, but on average, it's about 20% of those who go overboard or missing are rescued. So that's a little terrifying that it's not a higher number. And then also, assault is a problem on cruise ships as well. And unfortunately, 1/3 of the victims are minors. And it's very hard to bring these cases to court because of this theoretical jurisdiction problem, right? If you are starting in Miami and you're headquartered in Miami, but let's just say you go to Turks and Caicos and Dominican Republic and St. Lucia, it's hard to know where did the crime happen, who the suspects are, which territorial waters did this happen, because I believe it's a certain amount of mileage off of the coast of a country is technically your territory. In order to backtrack that is a very difficult task to do. And crew members are already overworked, they're underpaid, there's not really a lot of eyes looking around when a crime happens, so that makes it difficult also to find witnesses to testify in court. So the crime issue gets very, unfortunately, lost in the mix because there's not really a way to enforce these laws. And I feel like that's the general theme of this video, which I'm sorry if this video is a little boring with all these facts and such, but it's difficult when it's what I call a ghost company. You could be headquartered in one country but owned in another, and the ship was built in a third, and I think that entanglement makes it easy for cruise ships to get away with what they get away with. They don't have to be the ones pinpointed for crimes. They don't have to be the ones pinpointed for environmental problems, because who's really out there seeing if you're dumping trash and sewage and dirty oil out? When you have the emission test standards, you just buy a scrubber, just clean the oil for a day, there you go. So it's very hard to kind of pinpoint what these cruise ship industries are doing. And as a result, I think it's hard to enforce these laws because they're not just in one country. And every country has its own laws, so on and so forth. So in the next part of this video, we're going to get into possible solutions to make sure that this problem could be solved in the future. Because I think with the lockdown and everything pausing for a bit, it made people realize that the industry is not safe a cruise ship is not safe when disease is running rampant, right? We saw a lot of stories of lockdowns on ships, and you had to stay there for a certain amount of time. And there was actually an article that called cruise ships floating petri dishes, which is pretty disgusting. And so it made people think, is this really a safe way to travel in the future? And I think there might be a shift away from cruise ships in general, because you're on a tight ship, you're in close quarters, and it's hard to manage airflow and cleaning techniques on such a on such a shipping vessel. It's gonna bring up some solutions and maybe possible future trends when it comes to cruise ships. So let's get into that part of the video. Alright, so I'm sorry if this video was very ranty and a little all over the place. I just feel like I had so much to talk about and a lot of facts to bring up. But for some solutions, I think there needs to be rigid, actively enforced cruise ship laws. So these cruise ship laws need to be created by the countries that are visited and the countries where the companies are headquartered in or incorporated. So I think it would be interesting to have a cruise ship panel and have each country, the destination countries as well as the countries where the industries are incorporated in, talk and create these cruise ship bylaws. So these cruise ship bylaws could include emission standards, pollution standards, workers' rights, where you're allowed to hire crew members from, how many hours they're allowed to work, how to enforce laws in order to deter crime, and when crime does occur, how will that crime be brought to court? How will that case be brought to court? Is there a special cruise ship line kind of policing agency? Is it a separate policing agency? I think all these questions need to be answered so that people feel safer when they board a cruise ship. I think cruise ship standards also need to be more innovative in order to meet stricter emission standards, right? In the US, I think every couple of years it's changed to be stricter and stricter so that these car industries could be increasingly more innovative to protect the environment, and I think the same rules should apply to cruise ships, especially as they grow in size, as they grow in, luxury amenities. I don't think it's very cheap to invest in a water park or amusement park on a cruise ship. That probably takes tons and tons of energy, but there should be a way to offset that, whether that's incorporating solar, whether that's incorporating some sort of different energy source or fueling source in order to offset their large emission. And then lastly, I think I already went over this, but for workers, there needs to be international workers' rights, maybe a union, maybe even both. But I think workers need to be protected as well as the visitors. And so in order to make sure that they're not overworked or underpaid or even both, there needs to be international workers' rights that can be enforceable. I think that's the main theme here. You could create laws, but if they're not going to be enforced, there's really no point of doing it. So there has to be some way to investigate if these cruise ship industries are abiding by these laws. So maybe you kind of have a secret shopper on board, kind of looking at everything. Maybe instead of a health inspector, there's a workers' rights inspector that comes in and makes sure that they're abiding by the number of hours they're supposed to work, the breaks, making sure they're getting paid correctly. Again, these are just ideas, but I see two different sides of where cruise ship travel could go. And I think the first one is people avoiding cruise ships altogether. Honestly, I think a lot of people are scared with everything that's going on at this current moment. And so being on a confined boat for an extended period of time with people that you don't know is a gamble at this point. So I think people might be deterred from booking cruises in the future just because with how transmissible certain diseases are. But on the flip side, I've also seen the total opposite of what I just said, is that there's a renewed interest in cruises. And I think people are looking for easier ways to travel. I think travel has become very difficult, especially in the planning process. I mean, when I look at places to go, especially when it's international destinations, it's either you need a test 72 hours before. Oh no, you need a test at the airport. Oh no, you need a test 24 hours before. You need to be vaccinated and bring a test. No, when you get here, you need to, lock down for a certain amount of days. It's just very difficult to know which country needs what requirements from you as a traveler. And when you're doing that research, it gets extremely tiring. Because in your head, you're like, okay, here they need this, but here they need that, but here they want this. And it's just overwhelming, and you haven't even stepped foot in the airport yet. So I think the appeal of cruises, especially now, is that I could go to these international destinations and the cruise ship industry will be able to bypass or explain to me what those countries need without me having to do it myself, right? Makes it easier to plan. I think people want to feel relaxed. And I think with everything that's going on, it gets tiring having to know the rules, regulations, and you just sometimes just want to step foot on a cruise and have people tell you what to eat, what will relax you, what will entertain you, because you don't want to think about that. Sometimes you're just like, yes, let me just let it be, sit on a beach lounge chair, have the sun in my skin, and sit near the pool and explore different destinations. So I kind of see both trends being possible, honestly. So we'll have to see how it pans out in 2022. But make sure you like this video if you enjoyed watching it. Let me know in the comments where you think the cruise ship industry is headed. Do you think people are nervous and they don't want to be in a confined space? Or do you think the complete opposite? Do you think people just want a trip that they don't have to plan, where they don't have to know the rules and regulations of every single country that they visit, and that it's going to be booming once this all subsides? So thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit that notification bell. And thank you so much for your support again. And until next time.